Hello and welcome back to Twinhammer. Today we are super excited to be presenting our Celestian Insindiants guide, a brand new kill team released in the Shadow Hunt box. So the Celestian Insindiants are a 9-operative team of elite Psyker Hunter, Witch Hunter battle sisters, and they've got some very cool new rules. Today we're going to be giving you an in-depth guide, aiming to bring all the rules together in an easy to understand context. We're going to cover the lore, playstyle, team composition, faction rules deep dive, all the tips and tricks, how the team functions, strengths and weaknesses, and we're going to give you strategy and scoring and step-by-step instructions throughout your games throughout the guide. Before we get into things, a reminder, we have a 10% discount code for Crossfire Games. Crossfire Games has amazing accessories for Kill Team. We're honored to be presenting these incredible products, amazing tokens and custom measuring gauges, as well as very cool dice and score trackers. Highly, highly recommend you check out these products in the description below. All right, so let's get into the lore. They are witch hunters that are part of the Ordo Hereticus, which is one of the branches of the Inquisition. The 3 branches of the Inquisition are the Witch Hunters, Sisters of Battle, Alien Hunters, Death Watch, and Demon Hunters, Grey Knights. So they are tasked with finding unsanctioned psychers and combating internal threats to the Imperium, such as treason, heresy, mutation, and the like. So they are elite female warriors of the Imperium who are below the power level of a Marine, but higher power level than an elite human soldier such as an Aquilon or Kazarkin. And they are specially kitted out to deal with psychers. The playstyle of the team. The playstyle is a mix of semi-elite units able to access key buffs using careful setup and their friendly operatives' incapacitation as a trigger for these buffs. They are a close-range team. Most of their power is in melee or close-range weapons. They are combination teams, operatives combining to support their support abilities to make others stronger, and they've got a sacrificial theme, sacrificing wounds and operatives to get access to powerful abilities for the team. The Incindiants aim to hit hard in combat with some supplementary effective shooting. They use buffs to enhance operatives' APL for control and creative plays, and also can enhance reliability so they hit with precision. They have ways of being harder to kill than you would expect. Damage reduction, negation, and healing. And when they go down, they can buff remaining units to be more effective. They have ways to manipulate objective control for scoring. They have unique interactions with being wounded and being incapacitated, all playing around a pain and martyrdom theme. And they have an anti-psyker theme, and you're uniquely outfitted with benefits against models with psychic ability and the keyword psyker. So we're going to get into the team composition. 10 operatives come in Shadow Hunt, but you're going to be fielding 9 operatives, so you have a little bit of flexibility there. They are 9 wounds across the board, except for 2 operatives, which is the Superior, the Leader, which has 10 wounds, and the Abjurer, the Shield, which has 11 wounds. They are all 2 APL, except the Superior, which has 3 APL. They are all 3 up save, except the Shield, again, has a 2 up save. And they are all 32 millimeters across the board base size. So their archetypes are Security, Seek, and Destroy. And as we can see here, you take the Superior, and then you choose from 8 other operatives. The Warrior you can have any number of, and the Cremator you can have up to 2. All right, we're going to be getting into how to tell which operatives are which, because it can be a little bit tricky sometimes. So the Superior, you're going to be looking for a Null Mace, kind of fancy Null Mace, and either a Condemner Crossbolter or the biggest giveaway, which most people will be building, will be the Melta pistol here, the Infernal pistol. And summary of the Superior is she's the leader, 3 APL, important buff piece, 2 excellent 2-way operative, shooting and fighting. The Reliquarius is holding a very tall relic banner with a skull and has a crossbow, Condemner crossbow. It's a buff piece, important for objective control. It's weak in combat and a shooting operative. We have the Censor, Poppus, 2-handed staff is a dead giveaway. A debuff piece, making enemies hit and movement worse, important for objective control, strong in combat, no shooting. Abjurer, big shield and sword, tanky piece, 2 up save, 11 wounds, can protect others. Excellent in combat, no shooting. Denuncia, very important buff piece. She has her hand out raised and has this fleur-de-lis staff as well as speakers on her back. Is a very important way to get out Benedictions. She has stun shooting and decent combat, 3-3. Mortis Sanctus, large sword, no shield. Excellent combat piece, can issue a challenge against a particular enemy and has no shooting. And then we're going to go on to the Cremators, which have Null Rods and Hand Flamers. They're a really good 2A piece, good in combat and shooting. And the Warriors, similarly, they are good in combat and shooting. They have Null Rods and they have the combi weapon Condemner Crossbow. All right. So now let's get into what makes this team click. They have 2 faction rules that are very important to understand: Inspiration and Martyrdom. So they give out a unique faction buff called Inspiring. This one gives severe to weapons on the Operatives data cards, but it is also required to trigger a lot of other rules on the team. It namely combines with another faction rule called Martyrdom, which gives access to 4 powerful buffs that can be handed off to another model when an inspiring operative is incapacitated. We'll now go into detail on what inspiring means, what rules it's required for, and how operatives can become inspiring. So, Inspiration. Whenever a friendly Incindiant operative is inspiring, weapons on its data card have severe. So if you don't retain any critical successes, you could change one of your normal successes to a critical success. The devastating and piercing crits rules still take effect, but punishing and rending don't. So you can kind of guarantee yourself a crit, which can trigger some particular rules, but don't stack with others. All right, so inspiring. As we're going through the guide and as you're getting a concept for the team, you're going to see this word come up a number of times. It is actually required throughout the team for a number of abilities. This is 8 places where it is required. So we are going to be seeing it throughout the team. If you're ever wondering what abilities are attached to the inspiring keyword, we have them here. So Martyrdom is going to come in for giving out Benedictions. Holy Resilience, the damage reduction needs to be inspiring. Saintly Relics, you can get an increased buff for their shrug of damage. Unshakable Pursuit, you're going to need that to be inspiring. So Holy Example, the Superior can use a Firefight ploy for 0 CP if she's inspiring. Denuncia can use a ploy for 0 CP if she's inspiring. Devotion, Reliquarius can give inspiring to another operative if they are inspiring, and Inspired Strikes, the Warriors can add 1 to the critical damage if they are inspired. All right, so there's 6 ways to become inspiring. Declaring a charge action will make you inspired. Incapacitating an enemy operative with 6 wounds or higher will make you inspired. The Auto-Flagellator equipment on a 4+ can be inspired once per turn. Spiritual Mentor, the Superior can spend a 1 AP action to make a friendly operative visible and within 6 inspired. Reliquarius can give inspiration to another operative visible within 6. And Cremator, if the Hand Flamer deals damage, a friendly operative within 6 can become inspired. So here we are. So just in more detail, if you just perform the charge action before you move, you become inspiring. If you capacitate any operative with 6 wounds or higher in any way, then you become inspiring. Here we have some examples of some operatives that don't have 6 wounds. If you kill these operatives, you do not gain inspiration. We have the Auto-Flagellator equipment, where basically whenever you activate a friendly operative, you can roll 1d. You're going to take some damage equal to half the dice value rounding up. On a 4+, if the dice value is 4+, you become inspiring. And you cannot make more than 1 friendly operative inspiring using this rule per turning point. Inspiration, Spiritual Mentor. So we see a 1 AP action, a support action from the Superior herself, 6 inches and visible to the Superior. She can just basically make someone inspiring. And you can't do this more than once per turning point. Can't do it on counteract, for example. So interestingly, operatives are always visible and friendly to themselves. So she can make herself inspiring because it doesn't say another operative. It just says 1 friendly operative. Inspiration, we have the Reliquarius. So if the Reliquarius is inspiring, at the end of each of this operative's activations, if it also controls an objective marker and or one of your mission markers and is inspiring, you can give the inspiring keyword to another friendly operative visible to and within 6. So here we can see inspiring Reliquarius is controlling the objective, looks at an friendly operative within 6, and gives out additional inspiration there. Inspirational Pyre, if you deal damage with your Hand Flamer, let's say to this Huntmaster here, you can hand out inspiration to another operative. And in this case, no visibility is required, just has to be within 6 inches. And it just says it can select 1 friendly operative, again, not another operative, so can give inspiration to the Cremator itself here. Okay, so this is a inspirational tied to the Cremator. All right, now let's get into Benedictions. So Benedictions are basically 4 different bigger buffs that you can hand out, and they interact with the inspiring keyword. So basically what you're going to be wanting to do with the Incindiants is try to hand out as many of these buffs as you can get. And we're going to go through the mechanisms on how you can do that. So you can get extra APL, extra reliability in fighting and combat, healing, and for surprise movement plays as well. Now, there's two ways to get Benedictions. One is going to be through the main way, which is Martyrdom. And then two, actually, the Denuncia gives out Benediction. So she can actually remove inspiration, the inspiring keyword, from one operative and give a benediction to another operative within 6. So she kind of takes inspiration, trades it in for a benediction, takes inspiration away from one operative, trades it in for a benediction to give to another operative. All right, so let's see how inspiration plus martyrdom works here. So we saw 6 different ways to become inspired. Now, any form of incapacitation of inspired operatives, you choose another operative, either 6 inches or just visible, and then you could get those benedictions out on that operative. So become inspired, die gloriously, buff another operative. And so here's an example. Our warrior charges an enemy model, becomes inspired from declaring the charge action. We deal some damage, but we're incapacitated in the fight. Then we see another operative that is within 6 here, and we give them ceaseless for the battle. Okay, and here just a little bit of clarification. We could see it's either visible at any distance or not visible but within 6. Now, a key equipment that interacts with this is once per battle, the Vocifera Mortis. Once per battle, when an inspiring friendly operative is incapacitated, you could use this rule. If you do for the Martyrdom faction rule, the other friendly operative you select can be one that is invisible to or within 6. So this is good for Tomb World, where you can be isolated in certain rooms and you trigger this to give out a benediction without needing to be within these 2 restrictions. So here we can see an example on Volcus. The first example is, let's say warrior gets incapacitated. She gives out the benediction to another operative that she can't see but is within 6. Here it's not within 6, but incapacitated on the middle point can see this other operative here visible and just gives out a benediction there. Okay, and now we can see that speak of her deeds action from the Denuncia. She removes inspiring from one operative here, visible to within 6, and then gives a benediction to another operative that's visible to within 6 of her. Okay, so this is our benediction combo to get benediction on turn 1. Use Spiritual Mentor from the Superior to give inspiring to the Reliquarius. Move the Reliquarius onto your home objective at the end of her activation. Devotion triggers and give inspiring to the Denuncia. Denuncia repositions, then uses Speak of Her Deeds on herself to remove inspiring and give benediction to another operative. This warrior here, for example, an example gives them ceaseless with the Wrath benediction. Now, let's get into the actual benedictions. So let's take a look at the first one here, which is Ardor. Until the end of the battle, add 1 to the operative's APL stat. You cannot select this for the superior because she already has base APL, a 3 APL. So there's a couple operatives right off the bat that would be good for this. The Reliquarius Sensor would be good targets for objective control because they both have ways of already boosting their objective control. So if you give them this, they'll count as 3 APL, and then with their other abilities can kind of count as 4 APL effectively, so they could out-control even against a Marine. The Cremators and Warriors are good to give this to because they're really good with charge, fight, shoot, because they're good in combat and shooting. Let's look at Wrath. Until the end of the battle, weapons on this operative's data card have the ceaseless weapon rule. So weapons means it applies to both their close combat weapons, their melee weapons, and their shooting weapons. So could be good on Superior Warriors Cremators because, again, charge, fight, shoot, you'll get ceaseless for all of those actions, which is really, really good. And then a ceaseless could be good on the Sensor, which kind of hits on 4s but has high damage. Really good overall. Any operatives would be good with it, but if you can get it on these charge, fight, shoot operatives, then you're going to have, I think, the most effectiveness from this. All right, let's look at Restoration. That operative regains D3 plus 2 lost wounds. So you might think, okay, a little bit of healing, but this is really good to use in conjunction with an operative like the Abjurer because you already have a 2-up save and you're good at surviving in combat as well. So you can take this tanky protection piece and just keep it alive more and more. And then the Superior, let's say, or any operative you've already given a benediction to, there's no limit on benedictions. So you can hand out, you could keep these already buffed pieces going and just keep restoring them to kind of keep their effectiveness going. All right, let's take a look at Exigence. Exigence is a benediction where an operative can immediately perform a free dash or charge action. For the former, it cannot move more than 3 inches, so 3-inch charge, but must end that move closer to the incapacitated inspiring operative. So closer can mean like a millimeter closer. There's no minimum on the word closer. So it's, if you can just move slightly closer, you can kind of get rid of this restriction a little bit or work around it. The action being free and out of the activation means the same action can be repeated in the activation. So that charge or dash doesn't restrict the operative you do it from to then charge or dash in their actual activation. Because charge is actually distance plus 1 inch control range, you actually have 4 inches to work with effectively. So maybe it doesn't look that exciting at first, but it opens up these incredibly interesting burst plays like a free 3-inch charge, then a fight, and then a shoot, or like the charge, fight, and then charge again, or the fight, move, shoot, or the charge, fight, mission action, or the dash. You can get a dash and then move, like reposition, dash, and shoot. So you have this huge threat range. You can get a 3-inch dash, then charge and fight. So you can kind of extend your normal charge range by 3. And then you can do a lot of other cool plays here. Dash, charge, fight, shoot, dash, charge, fight, mission. So this does give these like surprising reach. The extra 3-inch can come in handy a lot. And a really cool combo is with the Firefight Ploy Unshakable Pursuit, because you can actually use this during an operative's activation before or after it performs an action. You can ignore any changes to its move stat. And then if it's inspiring, you can add 1 to the move stat, which is really, really nice, because then you can get an extra range on your charge or your reposition. And then combined with the Exigence, now you're kind of getting an extra 4 inches. So you can kind of charge an operative that's 13 inches away, which is really cool. And there's no limit to how many benedictions you could do on one operative again. So it's possible to do maybe even multiple free dashes if you really want to get a surprise play off, which is kind of really cool. So you can combine Exigence and Unshakable Pursuit for some really, really big range here. So here, we're going to see this in action. So this can be even used with the Vocifera Mortis to kind of like give the benediction to anyone, anywhere, once per game, which we saw. But here in this example, we have one within 6 here. We're incapacitated with this warrior. Then we give out the Exigence benediction to this other warrior. We're going to use that free dash from Exigence to kind of move a bit closer to the incapacitated operative, but to kind of wrap around this corner. Then we're going to use Unshakable Pursuit to get an extra inch on the charge, and it's going to open us up to be able to charge the backline of our enemy with this surprise charge move. Now, let's look at another one where, again, let's say that we have this operative that's incapacitated over here. We're not within 6, but we are visible. And again, you could combine this with the Vocifera Mortis, and then you can get that 3-inch dash. Again, we're moving a little bit closer towards the incapacitated operative, but now we're going to get the Unshakable Pursuit. You don't have to do Unshakable, but it will give you even more. Then we get a 7-inch reposition. We use our normal dash, and then we're able to shoot this operative all the way back here with our superior with the Meltagun. So very, very cool. All right, let's get into the defensive abilities of the Emperor's Faith. Okay, so all the defensive stack that this team has. So the defensive abilities that the Celestian Insindiants have access to can really increase their resilience, and they already have 3-up saves and 9 wounds, which is pretty good already. But they have a defensive reroll if they're on engage from shooting. They have damage reduction in fighting and retaliating. They have equipment that can allow them to ignore damage dice twice per game. They have the Abjurer can protect other operatives with this shield. They have severe and shock on a lot of their weapons, which means they can stay alive in combat a lot better. They have a null field from the sensor, which can make their enemies hit worse. And they have Restoration Benediction, which we saw, which can keep them going. So let's take a look at it. We have Wrathful Determination. This, you have to be on engage, but you can reroll one of your defense dice. So really nice. Let's say your Abjurer is on engage. You have a 2-up save with a reroll. So that's really, really good. And just in general, 3-up saves with a reroll will keep you alive a lot more often than you think. Holy Resilience is a big one. you have to be inspiring. This is one of the spots where that keyword comes in. Whenever an inspiring friendly operative is fighting or retaliating, normal or critical damage of 4 or more inflicts 1 less. So this is really, really good because it almost takes like a 4-5 profile into a 3-4. So it'll take them usually a hit and a crit to kill you, 4+5, but now it'll take 3 normals to kill. So it basically against an Abjurer would even extend that even more. So it basically allows you to effectively feel like you have more wounds in combat, which is very, very powerful here. It can make a lot of breakpoints in your favor for damage for sure. All right, so now let's get into Severe Shock. Severe and Shock pair. So we saw that we could get Severe from Inspiring, and then a lot of the weapons we'll see have Shock. So this paired with Holy Resilience means that you're going to be able to kind of strike them and block at the same time. So it's going to make your dice in combat feel more effective and make you harder to kill as well. All right, Saintly Relics is a really big, important thing for this team because you have this equipment where whenever an attack dice would inflict damage on a friendly operative, you can use this rule. If you do, roll 1d6 or 2d6 if that operative is inspiring. Again, another point where we need inspiring. If any result is a 6, ignore the damage inflicted from that attack dice. You cannot ignore more than 1 attack dice per action and 2 attack dice per battle this way. So you can do it up to twice per battle. You're basically looking to roll 6 to block a full dice of damage. And this can be triggered whenever an attack dice would inflict damage. So you get to choose. And so basically, you're going to be looking for key moments to trigger this. You have a 17% chance to block damage each time, 1 out of 6. And then you have basically 34% if you're inspiring because you can roll 2d6 to try to fish for 6s. It's not limited to a normal, so a critical hit can be blocked as well. This means you'll be even harder to kill in combat because you have 34% chance of blocking a hit in combat if you're inspired. It's not limited to combat and is always available to be used, basically. And it's limited to 1 attack dice per action. So let's say you can't block 2 attack dice if you got shot, or you can't block 2 attack dice in combat. It's only 1 per action sequence, basically, and it's maxed twice per battle. So once you've triggered this twice, it is gone. It's done. All right, the Abjurer has a very interesting ability where they can, once per turning point, when a friendly operative visible to and within 2 inches of this operative selected as a valid target of shoot or fight, you can use this rule. If you do, this operative becomes the valid target or is fought against instead, even if it would not normally be valid for this. If it's the fight action, treat this as being in the control range of the enemy operative. Shoot action, it's only in cover obscured if the original target was. And you can't do this if your enemy is shooting you with Blast or Torrent. So this pairs really nicely with the shield. Whenever this operative is fighting retaliating with their shield, each of their blocks can be allocated to block 2 instead of 1. So here we have it in action. We see that we have the Abjurer hiding behind the corner here. It's 2 inches invisible to the Superior. The Huntmaster comes in, tries to kill the Superior. We're going to trigger the Holy Defender, and we are going to jump in front and be fought instead. So the Huntmaster could be thinking, okay, I'll come and kill the Superior who's not that good. And then all of a sudden, he's now fighting the Abjurer, which is much harder to kill. And that is a nice protection ploy you don't even need to spend a CP for. So that's a nice little free ploy to set up. So look for key ways of setting up this Abjurer safety net. All right, another big thing is the Null field. So the Censor, which is holding this big fancy staff here, has an ability called the Null field. So it starts with a null range of 1. And whenever an enemy operative is within the null range of this operative, subtract 2 from their move stat and worsen the hit stat of the weapons by 1. And you have this cool way of extending this debuff aura with this operative for 1 AP. You add 1 to this operative's null range to a maximum of 5 inches. So you can then just keep track of it with the markers. You can make enemies unable to charge because you're subtracting 2 for their movement. You can make them fall short of breaking cover, so like their movement doesn't quite reach you. I would say for this, you're going to try to just inform your opponent, and as they're measuring out, you can just reduce their movement stats when they would come in so that it just doesn't feel like they're just getting sat in the open. It can make a fairly large circle when where your opponent hits worse. It can be very effective in combat, making them miss attacks that would normally hit with. Also good for protecting an area such as Plant Banner or the middle objective. It can grow each turn. And this nullifying ritual can't be done more than once per turning point, for example, on Counteract, and can't be done in control range of enemy operatives. So here we can see the null field. So it's kind of this emanating aura around the center. And what we need to take into account is a 32 millimeter base size is 1.25 inches. So as you're increasing this null field, you're going to go in 1 inch increments. And so even just one nullifying ritual, which adds 1 inch to already you're starting with 1 inch. Now you're at 2. You're measuring 2 outward from the base. So effectively, it's like 2 inches either side of the base, and then plus 1.25 inches for the base. So all of a sudden, turn 2, they're already at a big 5.25 inch diameter by turning point 2. And if they keep increasing it every turn, it's going to just get progressively bigger and bigger and bigger. It's enough to cover an objective, even with just 2 inches emanating. And its max diameter is going to be 11.25 inches. Okay, so you're going to have this 11.25 inch bubble around, which is going to be really, really huge by turning point 4 if you're able to get basically 4 nullifying rituals off. All right, let's get into the weapons and damage of the Order Militant. So they have a faction rule called Weapons of the Witch Hunters. And basically, its psychic ranged weapons cannot inflict damage on friendly operatives. For the effect of psychic actions, friendly operatives cannot be selected and are never treated as being within those actions required distances. Whenever an operative is within 3 inches of a friendly operative, that operative cannot perform psychic actions or use psychic additional rules. That operative cannot use psychic ranged weapons, and psychic melee weapons have no weapon rules and cannot have damage stats higher than 3/4. So they also have a rule called anti-psyker. Whenever this weapon is being used against an operative that has the psyker keyword, it has the lethal 5 weapon rule. So let's just see some examples here. So you could be thinking psychic weapons. I don't even remember there being psychic weapons. I'm going to show you a few examples of some psychic weapons. The Wolf Scout Rune Priest Skald has 2 psychic shots. And let's keep in mind, these have no effect against the Incindiants. It cannot inflict damage. So these 2 very powerful abilities can't even affect the Incindiants, which is really cool. Another hugely powerful ability from the Nemesis Claw is the Ventriloquar can kind of usually manipulate operatives and just generally create these surprise plays with disconcerting mimicry. And for the effects of psychic actions, friendly operatives cannot be selected and are never treated as being within those actions required distances. So disconcerting mimicry has no effect on the Incindiants. Nightlord Visionary, he has this psychic ability called Premonition. Spend 1 of your prescience points to gain 1 CP. If you have an Incindiant within 3 inches of the Visionary, that operative cannot perform psychic actions, so he can't do Premonition. Your null rods are kind of canceling out his psychic abilities, which is really, really cool. And we can see here that psychic melee weapons would have just go down to like a 3/4, and well, they can't go higher than a 3/4, and they have no special weapon rules. All right, so you could be thinking now, like, okay, psychers, how many psychers are in the game? I don't even remember seeing any. This is a list of known psychers by the might of the Imperium and the Ordo Hereticus. Find hitherto a list of all witches and psychers known to the Imperium. All right, so we've got 2 Imperial Psychers, the Wolf Priest Skald, the Mystic Agent. We've got 2 Xeno Psychers, the Magus and Brood Brothers, and the Patriarch, as well as, let's say, in the classified section, the declassified, I should say, Corsair Voidsguard, also their Wayseeker. We have the Heretical Chaos Psychers, the Mind Witch, Iconarch, Visionary, Ventriloquar, Malignant Plaguecaster, Felgor Shaman. We could see a heavy chaos theme here. And we have from the declassified teams the Balefire Alkali from the Legionaries and the Sorcerers from the Warp Coven. All right, so now let's get into some of their weapon profiles. So as we can see here, they have pretty good weapon profiles throughout the team. The Superior Cremator and Warriors all have the exact same Null Mace, 4 attacks, 3 ups, 4/4. They have Shock and the Anti-Psyker rule we saw. The Warrior can also get, if they're inspiring, up to 4/5 on their Null Mace. We have the big sensor, the Verge of Ammunition, has a 4 attacks, 5/5 Brutal Shock, which is pretty good. The Mortisancus has a Blessed Broadsword, 4 attacks, 4/6 Lethal, 5 Brutal. We have the shield from the Abjurer, a shield here, and the Blessed Broadsword. And then the Denuncia has her Staff of Declamation. And we see the Reliquarius is the worst melee in the team with just a gun butt. All right. And just a reminder, Brutal is your opponent can only block with critical successes, and we have 2 instances of Brutal from the Mortar Sanctus and the Censor. So here, talking about specific melee abilities, the Mortar Sanctus has this Zealous Ultimatum, so can basically issue out like a challenge. So you have to pick one enemy operative within 8 inches. It doesn't have to be visible. Your opponent can either accept or decline that ultimatum. If the ultimatum is accepted, whenever you're fighting or retaliating against that enemy operative, add 1 to the attack stat. So you'll go up to 5 if you're fighting against the person you challenged with the ultimatum. And then if you incapacitate your mark, then you add +1 for the rest of the battle. So maximum of 5. So basically, you're going to retain 5 attacks if you kill the person you challenge. If it's declined, that enemy operative you challenged, whenever they're fighting or retaliating, subtract 1 from the attack stat. So you're lowering their melee attack stat, basically. It's really good if you're against kind of a melee team and you're about to get maybe charged. You can do a strategic gambit and trigger this to try to make yourself stronger or make your opponent weaker. Or if you're about to win initiative, you can do this against the target you're about to charge and basically do the same thing. Either make them weaker or you stronger. All right, let's get into the ranged weapon profiles. The Sisters of Battle have what they call the Holy Trinity of weapons, the Bolter, Flamer, and Melta. And this team has all 3. And the very specialist weapon of especially this team, in the Sisters of Battle, this was rarely found, but this team has it in the greatest number. So this is really specialized to the Incindiants, especially the Condemner Cross Bolter, also called a Condemner Bolt Gun, is an Imperial combi weapon that combines the iconic might of the Imperial Bolter with a secondary launcher in the form of a single-shot crossbow, armature that fires a blessed silver stakes engraved with the sigils of disruption. So, important thing to keep in mind here is actually this is a combi weapon, so it's basically 2 weapons in one. So they've got a bolter on the bottom and basically this cool witch hunting crossbow on the top. And what's really confusing when you're looking at the profiles of this team is you see bolt pistol and condemner stake thrower, and you think you might have to choose between these 2 profiles. It in fact is the same weapon. You can just choose which part of the weapon you're going to use when you're shooting. So you either use the bolt pistol part of the weapon, which is 4 attacks on 3s, 3-4, range 8, or you use the condemner stake thrower, which is the crossbow part of the weapon. That's 4 attacks on 3s, 2-2. Devastating 1, Piercing Crits 1, Silent, and Anti-Psyker. So the thing to keep in mind with Devastating 1 and Piercing Crits 1 is that it combines with Severe. So you will be triggering Piercing 1 and getting 1 damage through just by shooting them. And it's Silent, which means it's permanent silent, not concealed position, so you can keep firing silent shots with this weapon the whole time. Here we're going to look at the entirety of the range damage profiles on the team. So we can see that we only have the stake throwers that are the unlimited range. So just the crossbows are the long range on this team. Everything else is going to be range 8. And then the Infernal Pistol on the superior, which is kind of like a mini Melta. It has only 3-inch range. We can see that if you take the stake thrower with the superior, she has a relic version, which gives her basically 3-5 instead of 3-4 on the bolt pistol part with lethal 5, and then 2-2 devastating 2 lethal 5 piercing crits 1 on the crossbow part. So her crossbow is a bit better. Then the Reliquarius and the Warriors, they both share the same normal crossbow profile, the Condemner Crossbolter. The Warrior, however, can get an extra critical damage. So they could go to 2-3 with Devastating 1 piercing quits. So Warriors can kind of push through a bit more than the Reliquarius can if they're inspired. A Cremator have the Hand Flamers, and they have 2 profiles. Standard, which is range 6, Saturate Torrent 1, or the Deluge, which is 4-inch range, but importantly, Seek Light. So they can only select 1 target because it's Torrent 0, but they can get Seek Light within 4 inches. So Cremators have this way to get Seek Light, and the Denuncia can get full Seek with her Voice of Condemnation, so she's shouting at her opponents, but it's only 1-1 damage, and it's 5 attacks hitting on 3s, 1-1, and it has Stun as well as Seek, range 6. So you're looking to try to stun your opponent and maybe do some chip damage with this. Now, the key thing, again, Severe pairs with Devastating and Piercing Crits from Inspiring. Torrent can give lethal 5, and they have Punishing, so that can trigger increased crits on that. Pure Silence, very strong for asymmetrical threats, and again, they have Seek on the Voice and Seek Light on the Flamers. So they have a few ways of getting offensive reliability. So they have Wrath, like we saw the Benediction, which gives out Ceaseless for the battle. You can have Suspect and Eliminate, which is a punishing ploy against a specific group of models. You can get Balanced if you're wounded on all weapons. And then you can spend 1 CP for Ceaseless if your opponent's not Imperium, or Relentless if they're Chaos or Psyker. So the ideal combo would be you have Severe, Ceaseless, Balanced, and then Lethal 5, maybe if you're using a Lethal 5 weapon, and Punishing. And then you have access to Relentless if your opponent's not Imperium. So they can get quite a bit of reliability if you stack it right. So let's see the Suspect and Eliminate ploy. Suspect and Eliminate, basically, you're going to select either one operative, enemy operative, or marker. If you select the enemy operative, that operative in each operative visible to and within 2 gains your suspicion token. If you selected a marker, each enemy operative contesting that marker gains one of your suspicion tokens until the end of the turning point. Whenever you are shooting or fighting against an operative that has your suspicion tokens, you get punishing. Okay, so you pick a group, and then you're going to put down some suspect tokens on each of them. And if you pick a model, it's everyone visible within 2 of that. If you pick an objective, it's everybody contesting that objective. And punishing is, if you retain any critical successes, you can retain one of your fails as a normal instead of discarding it. It does not stack with Severe. That has been FAQ'd. And it pairs really well with Lethal 5. So because Lethal 5, you can get twice the chance of rolling crits. Key thing to keep in mind here is it says shooting or fighting, which is not retaliating. So you wouldn't get punishing if these operatives are coming into you, fighting you, and you're retaliating. So better if you're the aggressor. And a key thing here is if the Denuncia is inspiring and she's picking an enemy operative or marker within 6 inches of her, you can do this ploy for 0 CP here. So another place where inspiring comes up. And a cool thing here is there's a strategy ploy, Suffering and Sacrifice. Whenever a wounded friendly operative is shooting, fighting, or retaliating against an enemy operative, its weapons have the balanced weapon rule. So wounded means, while an operative is fewer than its starting wounds remaining, it's wounded. So if you've taken any damage on your operatives whatsoever, you're considered wounded. And then you would have balanced if you're wounded on any shooting or fighting or retaliating. So an interesting synergy is they have an equipment called the Auto-Flagellator, which is one of the ways you can get inspiring, but you're going to be inflicting 1 to 3 damage on yourself. And then this will combine with the Suffering and Sacrifice ploy to give yourself balance. So it's an interesting choice between dealing a little bit of damage to then gain a little bit of reliability. If you feel like your wound breakpoint will hold enough, you damage yourself a little bit maybe before going in and charge fight shooting. If you pair this with Wrath, you're going to have balance and Ceaseless, which is going to be a really, really cool combo. And it just, to clarify, it says weapons. Its weapons have the balance rule. So it doesn't say weapons on the data card, which means it can be used with crack or frag grenades. Also here, Suspect and Eliminate says operatives weapons as well. So it can be used with the equipment weapons as well. So both of Suspect and Eliminate and Suffering and Sacrifice would work with crack grenades and frags. So let's take a look at Fervent Hate. So this is a ploy that's very flavorful because it's basically targeting enemies of the Imperium. You can't use this against a team that has the Imperium keyword, which there are quite a few. So you can't use against kind of your allied forces. But anyone who's not Imperium, you can get Ceaseless on demand, basically, after rolling your attack dice. Or you can get Relentless if they have either the Chaos or Psyker keyword, which is really nice because this is on demand, shooting, fighting, or retaliating. So if you're facing a non-Imperium team, you're going to be looking to use this if you roll badly. They have a few ways of getting additional damage out, which can take your opponents by surprise. You have your Psych Out grenades, which are basically damaging stun grenades. You have Faith and Fury, which you can do these sweeping strikes in combat. And then you have Glory to the Martyrs, where you can strike with an unresolved success when fighting or retaliating before getting removed from the kill zone. So Faith and Fury here, use this 5-fight ploy when your operative is fighting and you strike with a critical success. After resolving that strike, inflict D3 damage on each enemy operative visible to and within 2 inches of that operative in the order of your choice. Roll separately for each. Note that this friendly operative would become inspiring if enemy operatives with a wound stat of 6 or more are incapacitated as a result of this damage. So basically you're going in, you're fighting, you're striking with a crit, and then you're dealing D3 damage to each other enemy operative visible to and 2 inches of your operative. So pairs with severe here because you need to strike with a critical success. So really good way of getting chip damage to a group of enemies. Glory to the Martyrs is a really nice one because if you die in a fight or retaliate, before you're removed from the kill zone, you can strike with one of your unresolved successes. So if this Murder Wing operative comes in, use 2 hits to kill you, or 3 hits to kill you, you can just strike back with one of your unresolved successes before you're removed. So even if you have like a crit, it's any success. So just a way of getting surprise damage. So they could kind of come in, you damage each other, they just about kill you, and then you strike them with a last hit to kill them on death. And if you do that, if you kill them with this, you become inspiring just before you die. You become inspiring if you didn't have it before, and then that allows you to trigger Martyrdom upon being incapacitated. So here we have the operatives profiles for reference. This is the Superior, the Denuncia, the Abjurer, the Mortis Sanctus, the Censor, the Reliquarius, the Cremator, and the Warrior. Okay, now we're going to get into some scoring. So they have nice ways of scoring the crit op. They have access to 2 abilities that can control markers, and then they can give out that 3 APL like we saw, and then they can get some stun out as well. So the Verge of Admonition, you have the Censor can be treated as 1 APL higher when determining control of an objective marker. So if you're trying to control, it basically counts as either 3 APL, or if you have Ardor, counts as 4. The Reliquarius treats the total of enemy operatives within 3 of her to be at 1 APL less total. So you take a group of enemy operatives, add up their APL, and then you subtract 1 from that. So both of these can give you extra ways of holding objectives. And the Voice of Condemnation, we saw that profile with the Seek and Stun, can make your opponents -1, making it easier for you to control objectives. Now, let's get into some TAC ops. So they have access to Security and Seek and Destroy. And so here we see the 3 Security TAC ops for the Approved Ops 2025. And they have pretty good synergy with all 3. Plant Banner, you have a lot of good synergy because you have ways to control markers, and you can be fairly tanky, so hard to get off that banner. So really nice there. Martyrs is, in my opinion, the most synergistic with the team because you kind of want your operatives to die in the right way to give yourself those benedictions. So this will be able to drop a martyr token if you die on an objective, and you're going to want to try to play for the crit op anyways. So controlling objectives is what you're going to be wanting to do to score the most anyways. So you can kind of combine your TAC op scoring with your crit op scoring here. And the most interesting thing is using the auto flagellator. If your opponent doesn't kill you, you have ways of damaging yourself if you just need to get a martyr token down. And just quite an interesting synergy there because it doesn't specify that an enemy operative has to incapacitate you. It just says when you are incapacitated. So you can auto-flagellate yourself to trigger a martyr token, which is very cool. Envoy, pretty good if you're really outnumbering your opponents. You have ways of exploding forward with Exigence like we saw. So ways of kind of exploding into your opponent's half is possible. So Envoy's not bad synergy as well. Now we have Seek and Destroy as the other archetype. We have Sweep and Clear, which is pretty good, but again, a little bit action intensive. You have to kill an enemy operative and then also clear the objective as well, which can be a little action intensive. Maybe not the best synergy, but still not bad. Dominate, pretty good synergy maybe into hordes because you do have ways of keeping operatives alive, as we saw. So you can kind of play a little bit passive turn 2 and then 3, 4, try to get some dominate tokens and keep trying to heal your guys. And then route, you have decent synergy as you can explode forward with Exigence into your opponent's half and deal damage to groups as we saw. And not too bad. Route is also into probably higher operative teams, not bad, or even not bad into elites if you're planning on playing aggressive because you would get 2 VP just for killing an operative that has a wound stat of 12 or more. So in terms of TAC ops and crit ops, this team has pretty good synergies. So scoring, if you set it up right, is pretty good with this approved ops pack for this team. Now, their strengths is, as we saw, they can be unexpectedly tanky. They're good at pushing through a lot of damage in combat. The ways of being unexpected basically means that you have those unexpected buffs you can hand out through Benedictions to kind of get operatives surprisingly killy or surprisingly tanky. They have good reliability, as we saw, many ways of stacking reliability buffs. They have good synergies team-wide, and then they have ways of getting those asymmetrical silent shots. And weaknesses of the team, I would say maybe lack of unlimited range damage. We only saw the crossbows are the only unlimited range you have, so you have to get close to your opponent. They rely on those carefully set up combos like we saw, getting that inspiration train rolling with the Benedictions. They need to be close to each other. We saw 6 inches a lot of the time being a trigger and visibility being another trigger, so a little bit hard to get those. You have this also delicate balance between taking damage and staying alive, as we saw with certain ploys for being wounded, and Martyrdom triggering obviously off of incapacitation means you want to be trading operatives in the right way. If you just go in and try to sacrifice operatives too quickly and too aggressively, you're not going to get that balance right. So, all right, so that concludes our guide. So overall, very interesting team. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And again, a reminder, if you need anything Kill Team, if you're excited to get these when they come out individually, Top Shelf in Oakville and CHIMERA Gaming in Kitchener-Waterloo are amazing spots. We highly recommend these 2 stores because they are pillars of the Canadian Kill Team community. They're always running amazing events. They're amazing guys there, and they will take care of you extremely well. So if you're looking for anything Kill Team, highly recommend there. They have everything hobby as well, paints and basing and everything you could want. Thanks for watching. Let us know. Leave a comment. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you like this guide, this summary format with an in-depth look at everything, we have tons of guides on other teams and kill zones and data slates, so please find those if you're interested. And we'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for watching. Have an amazing rest of your day, and we will see you very soon for our Murder Wing guide.